if she wants bubbles. She was told no. All right, so we left off here in chapter 14. That too, yeah. Our second wave can't stop if our first wave doesn't, but the second wave is more intense to the first wave, I guess, because we were just starting to release. So, all right, so get into the fun side of things now, right? So we're looking at the U.S. urban patterns. What is urbanization? Question. And don't mind the screaming behind me. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to take a bubble bath. Who doesn't want to take a bubble bath right now?
We all need one.
Right?
Bath for everyone.
Bubble baths for everybody. Go relax. Bath bombs.
Oh yeah.
So what is urbanization when we're looking at this? And we're looking at the process of really how our, because the last thing we left off was mega cities and how cities are developed, right? And how our food sources are kind of depends on people and all that aspects. But when we're looking at urbanization, urbanization is the process by which an increasing proportion of the population lives in cities and has a growing influence on culture. As much as what's going on right now, our lovely high desert has a growing influence on culture because of the aspects of what high desert is about, you know, aspects wise. High desert has its own culture, believe it or not. We're known for living in the middle of nowhere, but it's really not in the middle of nowhere. I can think of other places that are in the middle of nowhere. But when you're looking at it from a following of a social map status, we're not in the area of like LA, San Bernardino. We're known, but we're not really high known. So we're sifting the resources and the powers, right, caused by urban migration. So you have people that are moving from San Bernardino County and LA County to the high desert because why? What are the reasons why people move up here?
More space.
More
cheaper
space.
rent.
It's
Have
Up
long.
here.
keyword there, it's cheaper, right?
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
more land, you get bigger housing, and less the price.
More for your money.
You get more bang for your buck, basically, right? So that's what causes the urban migration. Now, if high desert becomes like LA, Victorville, Hesperia, Apple Valley, Adelanto become more like a LA County type aspects, what's going to happen?
Everything is going to go up. Housing is going to go up.
Housing's going to increase. I mean, which it has been over the years. I mean, it fluctuates. It increases and it decreases and increases. But if it becomes more like LA, where it stays at the consistent high, are you going to have urban migration again?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have people looking for cheaper housing elsewhere because now it's overpopulated and turning into be a mega city type aspects because they're just too much. And then you have these lovely things called edge cities, which are basically just little clusters or large clusters of services and facilities that and residential areas that are kind of near highways, intersections that provide sense of place and people live, shop, and work. Hence high desert, right? We're kind of an edge city. We have, you know, we have two freeways, I guess you could look at it as, but we really have only one freeway that allows us up and down the Cajon Pass. But if you look at it, unless if you want to take backways, we could get, that's a whole nother story. But I mean, there's other ways to get up and down. They just take you longer, but we really have only one major interstate that kind of goes back and forth for us to communicate, or not communicate, commute. I am off tonight. Sorry, guys. So those are edge cities. So technically, yeah, we're part of urban patterns, but we're also edge cities because, yeah, we have things that are here to help us facilitate, function, live, work, that type of aspects. But a majority of the people travel down the hill to work.
Yeah.
You know, why? You make more money down the hill than you would up here. So travel down, live in cheaper, make more money down. However, I've did that for years and I'm like, I don't see the benefit anymore. So I did the change real quick. I feel like I did more money in gas and sitting in traffic than I was at home. I got really frustrated with that, but people do it. You know, you do what you have to do.
Car repairs.
Yeah, I'm one that gets a new car about every 3 years anyways, because I put so many miles on my car. And then you have like the changes in the suburbanization as well. But when you're looking at patterns, how urban is our state? The rural urban makeup of the United States. If you believe California is number one on the states for urbanization,
Mm.
doesn't surprise me at all. New Jersey is next, Nevada is afterwards, but your most rural, and what's the difference in between rural and urban? Does anybody know? Anybody want to give a stab at it?
I would say rural would be something less lonely, right? Less city wise. I don't know how to explain it. Something
Like feelings. I feel that's like rural.
yeah. I think feeling
Think of rural of a lot of land. So Phelan would have a lot of land.
So a lot of
Maine-
land, not too many houses.
A lot of land and not a whole lot of population.
Population. There you go. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So like Maine has a lot of historical points. But if you think about who lives in Maine, what's the population like? They're older. It's more of a historical point now than it is more of a living, adapting area. West Virginia, I have family that lives in West Virginia, and they are I can't say they're hillbilly, but they're pretty close to hillbilly-ish. They have their house and their store that they own on the same property. You know, it's kind of one of those things. They literally walk out their front door to go to the other one, and it actually used to be part of the house. They just disconnected it at one point. But I mean, I have a great grandfather who used to be, you know, horse, shotgun. I mean, as hillbilly as it gets. You know, moonshiner. You know, you want to talk about rural and urban at that point, but he was from West Virginia. So West Virginia hasn't changed in regards to that aspects. But if you look at it, most of your rural states are down south or up north that really haven't developed. Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota. More of your farming lands. And then more of your most urban areas are more of your city living. You have those edge cities to where, yeah, you have your main cities, and then you might have one that might outbreak or outbranch a little bit to where they're commuting. So when you're seeing the shifting resources of power becoming of the urban migration, so you can see how fast cities can shrink, you can see how fast cities can grow. A lot of times when people leave out of California, they go where?
Florida.
They usually go to another state, so it's usually Texas,
Yeah.
Colorado. Not so, I mean, on here it says North Carolina. I don't know who would be going to North Carolina. Florida, South Carolina. But if you think about where are these locations at? Warmer, bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see Colorado's on there twice, but that's what people are doing. So their cities are shrinking to the point to where there's almost no city left, and they're migrating elsewhere. Ohio is the one that's actually extremely shrinking cities. Cleveland, Ohio was, you know, really known, a really popular area, but hardly anybody lives there anymore. There's nothing to produce in regards to making it more of a modern city to make it grow anymore. They're pretty much maxed out. So that's how I remember I was telling you guys in regards when we're looking at cities and all that aspects that, like Victorville, can Victorville get any bigger? It's right in the heart, it's right in the middle. It really can't expand. The only way how it could get expand is if they change the boundary lines in regards to the cities. So it makes it really hard for like Victorville to put any more new housing, developments, anything like that in Victorville. There's nothing left in there. But yet, if you talk about putting something in Hesperia, yeah, there's still plenty of land in Hesperia, or Oak Hills, or Phelan, or Apple Valley, or Adelanto. In all those areas, there's still vacant land. So you're able to still have that fast growing aspects. It's just not popular. So edge cities, like I said, breaking the mold of the traditional cities provide services to those who live and work there, but include drawbacks, lack of identity, Like I mentioned, you say high desert and everybody goes, where? Victorville? Ah, okay. Or if you say Hesperia, huh? Right? Some of the edge cities have lack of parks. Unfortunately, that is a huge issue, but like we discussed about now with the developments of new housing and stuff like that, they have to put in some type of a school. If it expects to bring in X amount of population, they have to put in parks. They have to make sure that it doesn't overload what is currently there. So there are some, but I mean, I've gone through a city and there's not one park. It's kind of like, how sad. Where do you guys got to go? How far do you have to drive? How many of you have ever driven on the 40? Like going out towards Arizona?
Yeah, nothing.
And
There's nothing, right? But yet there's a city called Millbury.
there.
What is in Millbury besides 2 gas stations?
I think there's a school.
There is.
I
It looks
think
like a
I've done-
shack.
Yeah, I've actually done an event out there. 'Cause nobody would. None of the companies. Like I'm the closest company to them.
Mhm. You know, so it's kind of one of those things to where, I mean, are there parks out there? I don't think there is.
Mm-mm.
You know,
No,
like you said,
nothing.
there is a school, but the school,
Yeah.
you blink, you miss.
And like everybody knows everybody.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Everybody's in everybody's business. Same thing with Big Bear. Right? Big Bear has a couple of parks, but Big Bear is pretty big. You know, there's a lot of activity up there, but there's resorts. There's not a whole lot of parks for kids to play at. And once again, if you do find one, don't blink. You'll pass it up real quick. So what some parts are trying to do, and I have a feeling DeVore, same thing, or you can even look at Hellendale. You know, you got DeVore down right there, right at the split at the 215, and you got Hellendale that's out here in between Victorville or Adelanto and Barstow. Once again, yeah, there's schools out there, but you blink. I know my father-in-law lives out there, and I'm like, anything other than housing out here, and there's very little. So when they're looking at this is basically middle-class people moving into rundown areas of a city. Take Harlem, for example. If you say Harlem, what comes to your mind? Honestly.
City. City. Businesses, buses, buildings.
But what is Harlem really known for?
Harlem, basically, I think of the blues. I think of shows. I think of Apollo, things of that nature.
But at the same
African
time, it's
Americans.
African Americans, very poverty-stricken, very rough neighborhoods. If you think, you know, unfortunately, if you think of Harlem. However, what this is trying to do, this is trying to bring more of that middle-class people moving back into a rundown area of a city. And it replaces the poor as they buy and restore the homes. And what they're also trying to do is trying to revamp the current stores that are there, the historical points that what Harlem is known for.
Yes.
You know, which is a good thing, and revamping them, rebuilding them, reopening them, and doing like a bike tour and showing the history and Batman. Yeah. But it's also one of those things too where it's, you know, you want to live in a city that you're kind of proud of. You don't want to live in a city that has this bad rep all the time. And it's hard to rebuild and give that basically that regenerification, that renew feeling, and get rid of the old and bring in the new type of aspects. So that's what this is talking about. It's, you know, the urban patterns on try to basically regenerate the history of what it was truly like, but with a new sense of more of a, you know, model mix of, you know, middle class and not so much of an upper class or a lower class.
Now, when Clinton, when he his presidency was over, he moved out there, and those places were going back to where they were before. So they
They were.
they cleaned up a lot of Harlem. So it's not, as run down as it used to be. Once he got out there and started cleaning up, people started coming and buying up again and cleaning up. So it is better now than what it was. Now, so, but
It
after
still has
COVID,
that reputation.
yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, just like, some people, you say LA, it's the same aspects, I like going down into the historical points in LA. I like going down to, the museums down there, the art museums. I love going to Alvera Street. I love all of that aspects.
Mhm.
That's the historical points, but yet leave those areas and it's like, get me
Mhm.
home. It's kind of like, it's almost terrifying in some of the areas. It's like, hey, don't make a wrong turn somewhere. Or, so it's kind of almost the same aspects, but LA didn't used to be that way.
Mhm.
You didn't, drive down the street and see homeless people living on the streets everywhere. Not like it is now. So yeah, it's, and who knows how long it's going to take for LA to recome from all of this that's going on right now too. So it's going to be even harder to basically regenerate all of this aspects. Changes in suburbanization. People move from one city to the suburbs. In other words, I don't want to live in the city anymore. I want to live in the outskirts. Get me out of here. About over half of all Americans now live in suburbs. They create unexpected changes and consequences. And basically, suburbanization is a migration of people from, like I said, one city to another. It's community basically adjacent to a city. So if you really want to think about it, you get to look at Devore. It's adjacent to San Bernardino. Excuse me. It's there. It's kind of more of a suburb type aspects. I heard someone just slip and fall. Sorry. So when we're looking at the concentric zone models, do you guys know how cities are even put together? Who develops them? What type of models they decide to use? What type of consequences they look at? Does anybody know? Like there's a whole development in regards to the types of models of urban growth, right?
What was your question? Who does that, you said?
Yeah, who does it?
I know when we were looking at some land out here, I know Apple Valley has a developer out, town of Apple Valley. You go there and you say exactly what you're looking for, what you want to build, and they'll tell you which area you can, which is more industrial and things of that nature.
Mhm.
So
Every city has its own. But before they're a city, who develops it? Right? Before they say, okay, you know what? This is going to be called Hesperia. This one's going to be Victorville. This one's going to call, do you guys know the history in regards to why they're called what they're called?
No.
No, right?
Mm-mm.
But there was a developer that said, you know what? We're going to plot this off. We're going to use this type of development. So either a concentric zone, a sector zone, multiple nuclei, or a peripheral model. How are we going to set this up? We're going to design it this way. We're going to have some businesses here. We're going to have homes here. We're going to have this here. We're going to have this there. Da 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 da. They plan all of this. That's how city develops, and they come up with these models in regards to each one. So when you're looking at the invasion of the census circle type aspects, so when you look at the concentric zones, it's very monotone, like central and then branches all the way out to a circle, right? When you look at sectors, they're kind of like triangled off. For those of you who have ever driven in Apple Valley, the inner and outers and drive me crazy, by the way. Mike, you couldn't just come up with one damn road. Sorry. Highway 18 is Highway 18. Do I need an outer road? No, just make me turn and make me turn on another road. Don't give me an outer. But it's kind of one of those aspects to where they designed it for a certain way for certain district aspects. So depending on what they want, what their intentions were for the cities is how they developed them, and how they are developing them. We're more of a district of a peripheral model, and it's a model that shows an impact of radio highways on the movement of people in several ways from the central city to the outskirts. So we have our central cities, we have the highways to get us to the outskirts, we have suburbs, we have shopping malls, we have railroad highways, we have railways basically. You know, we have, the only thing we don't have is an airport, but we have our local airports. We have one in Apple Valley, we have one in can't think, Hesperia. And I do believe Adelanto has one as well.
Yeah, the long.
But the one in Adelanto is more of an Air Force base because they have the bigger airplanes. It's not more. It's more for commercial, not private use, I guess you could say. But you know, there's also a combination of employment and shopping centers. So we have all those. So we're more of that peripheral model of a D in pretty much all cities. When you're looking at more of a multiple nuclei or the sectors or this the central, those are more business sectors. So you could look at like the city of industry, where it's mainly all business district. There's very little housing in city of industry. It's just a matter of how they wanted to set it up for. How what model. Makes sense? Yes, no, maybe. Like, I don't care anymore. It's models. The only one you need to know is this one, though, for the test, the peripheral model. Did you guys get it all? So there's critiques on models, right? And models are bound by time, sprawling areas around the older cities with no distinctive patterns. So a lot of times, like if you take like the old San Bernardino area, like the more of the historical San Bernardino started off as like a little shell, and then it had to branch out to develop for all the population that kind of end up going out. But if you look at San Bernardino, you have different aspects of San Bernardino. So it kind of started off in the circle, and it remained in a circle. So it may remain more of a central, which one is it? Concentric zones. There we go. It remained more of that aspects. Because it's an older city and they just had to develop around it. You kind of tend to see that in the older cities, and the development of the structures and stuff like that wasn't really planned out accordingly. So I feel like Apple Valley was kind of that way, like, okay, we're going to slap a street here, and we're going to slap a street here, and you got a street here and over here, and we're going to make this street and this street the same, but we're going to have a big gap in between. And it's kind of crazy in Apple Valley in regards to like, when you take the older part of Apple Valley and then you look at the newer part of Apple Valley, it's kind of almost that same aspects, that model. However, we still have the highways. Go ahead. You're fine.
So I'm just curious because I know LA right now, I mean, it has its bill. Does that fall under one of the other models, the A, B, or C, or is it under a peripheral model as well?
The peripheral model follows for LA as well. Because if you think about how many freeways or how many highways are in LA.
Okay. No, yeah, you're right. There's so many ways to go into LA.
You have the 405, you have the 101, you have.
And yeah, 91.
You have just about any way and everywhere that you possibly want to get into LA.
Okay. Okay.
And eventually you just run out of road because there's no more road left. It's ocean. You want to go that far. But, you know, once again, you know, LA is kind of an area to where can they develop anymore? The only way how they develop is to deconstruct and they build upward. They can't build outward anymore.
Which I think that's what they're trying to do. Every time I go there, I'm like, oh, that building, is it me or is it higher or what's going on here?
Mm-hmm. Or it's like, hey, what happened to that building? Now that's that. Okay, like, all right. I see. Every time I go down there, it's like, stop at the construction of the freeways too. It's
Yeah,
like
there's
enough
always
is enough.
construction.
Always. There's
Yeah.
either constructions on the freeway, construction on the roads. But, you know, in order to build wider, they have to buy out housing. When you buy out housing, what do you do to your population? You push them out. They have to go elsewhere. So city life, you have alienation in city life, you have community in city life, and who lives in the city? Who do you think lives in the city life? What type of people live in the city? Think of New York City. What type of people live there?
It's
I
a
would say
mixture,
maybe
actually.
more business
A
people or
mixture?
single family individuals, or even a small family of a child of one or two.
Yeah. So remember, alienation is that lack of connection of work, right? Or production of work. I mean, that connection to labor. Community within our community in the city. How much community social type aspects do you do? Does your community offer everything that you need or everything you want? You know, and when we're talking about who lives in the city, so there's different type of um, I don't want to say culture wise, but the way how they're the types of people who live in the cities, there are different types of people and they're labeled differently. Per sociologist Herbert Gaines, they kind of looked at 5 different types of urbanization and how people live in cities. One is cosmopolitans. These are intellectual, professional, artists, you know, entertainers. Do they not all live in LA or do they not all live in New York? Right? And then you have singles who are single, they're not married, they're able to live in those small, compact areas, right? Once again, that city lifestyle, fast-paced city lifestyle, I should say. The other one is ethnic villagers, right? Feeling a sense of identity, working class members of the same ethnic groups bonded together. And then you have the deprived, and then you have the trapped, right? The deprived are basically, you know, emotionally disturbed and having little income, education, work skills. They're kind of stuck. They can't get out of there. And then the trapped is kind of the same thing. They don't live in an area by choice. They have to live there because that's what they can afford. Some are trapped or even within ethnic groups. They're invaded. They can't, there's nothing they could do. But there is a norm of non-involvement and diffusion of responsibility. They don't like to take responsibility of their own lives, unfortunately. They kind of tend to blame everybody else at the same time. So they diffuse those responsibilities saying, not mine, it's yours. So alienation, the price of personal freedom is alienation, can lead to a sense of powerlessness and normallessness. Community in the, community in the city. Urban villagers, you know, you're looking at more of the slum or the low rent areas. People not knowing the area, not being told what is the low rent areas, but here you go. You know, who lives? What would happen if we had, and this is probably sad to label this way, this is in New York. You have, you know, a group of Jewish sects, basically, that type of, you know, religion.
Those are the Orthodox Jews.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think they fit in? Urban dwellers, city dwellers, they're in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Do they fall more underneath the deprived, the trapped, the ethnic villagers? Obviously ethnic villagers, but, you know, because it's telling you they're ethnic villagers is too. But are they cosmopolitans, or are they, I mean, they might be single. They're pretty young. Some of them, there's a couple look like they're older. There's some of them look like they're really young. But these are those urban dwellers, you know, ethnic villagers. How would you, if you lived in New York and you saw them walking, what would you think? I think of my words.
What will we think? How? You mean of what they are, or
As in community, social, do you think they're social people? Do you think they're non-social people? Do you think they're more of a trap type aspects to where they're not communicating with others?
they basically stay in their own cluster?
Mm-hmm. You know, are they judged for that?
In New York, no, because the Jews, they basically own a lot of the property and a lot of the things that's there. That's who they are. Their synagogues and things of that nature. Most of the holidays in New York, if it's a Jewish holiday, you can bet your cookies that it's going to be closed.
Exactly.
They have a lot of prestige
Yeah.
in that in the New York area. A
But
lot of time downtown Brooklyn, things of that nature. So.
exactly. But on a normal basis, on an average person visiting, seeing, they're not going to be, they're going to just think they're tourists and not actually people that live there. You know, unless if you were a full-time lived in the city, lived within the areas, and this was a normal thing for you to see, you're not going to know any different. So that's just why sometimes, you know, they tend to have a hard time fitting in between all those 5 categories, because some people look at them as being trapped, some people look at them as being deprived, some of them look at them as being the ethnic villagers, some of them look at them as like, you really don't fit in anywhere, you know, but at the same time, they fit in, they just, they're their own uniqueness. And I already went through all these. Is there, when you're looking at the critique, how, when you're looking at the categories, and you're looking at both the singles and the cosmopolites, lights, however you want to pronounce the last part there, I can't get it tonight. When you're looking at, when you're comparing the two, what's the difference in between the two? They're single, artist, they value confidence of culture benefits, they're looking at the stages of their life courses, they're looking at businesses and services, apartment complex, whatever it takes. What's really the difference in between the two?
Between which ones again?
Since
The top 2.
I think with the single people, they're not like as far off in their life. I feel like they're not so professional. They're still kind of figuring out what job maybe they're going to take, and maybe where they're living, they're not looking to stay there long term.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to cosmopolits, like they're probably going to be there longer.
So here, these are intellectual, professional. They've already found their paths. They already found their life goals, right? They know this is where they want to live, and they're perfectly a-okay with it. These here, these are individuals who are in their 20s, 30s, still trying to find those life courses. But they have very similarities, very common similarities, that they're trying to be that professional aspects. Just one's met it and one's still working on it. It's okay. We're all still working on it, right? Some of us may not be single anymore, but we're still all working on it. So the norm of non-involvement and diffusion of responsibility, I'll get that out. The protection of personal space through the norm of non-involvement. And then the more people, the less help, and the assumptions that another one will do the right thing. And I'll ask you guys this question. Have you ever been in a situation where you've been in a car and you're not involved, but you've seen a car accident? Do you stop? Or do you do the right thing and help?
I've called like 911 prior before. Usually I want, like, honestly, if I have my kids with me, I probably won't stop, because I mean, you hear so much that people that stop and help, then something happens to them, and I think that just clicks on my head. But usually if I see something, the first thing I do is I call, and they either tell me, oh, they already called us, thank you for calling us again, or if not, like, thank you for advising us. But my first instinct is calling.
Yeah.
Hey, I seen this and I'm on this freeway and whatsoever. But yeah, I call.
Yeah, it's one of those situations. So what a lot of people have in their mentality is, a lot of people are here. I mean, take the freeway for an example. There's tons of people on the freeway, and they see an accident, and some people think, there's tons of people here, I don't need to stop. Somebody else will do. Right? And so that's why they're talking about that diffusion of responsibility. But if you have everybody in that train of thought of thinking, no one's going to stop, or no one's going to call. So, I mean, it's always one of those things. I remember, I'm going to age both of us here. I was pregnant with my middle son, actually, and we lived in Ontario at the time. And my husband and I and our oldest were going out to eat. And we lived, like I said, we lived in Ontario. And there was a train track that was always busy. It was a non-busy street, but it still had the train tracks. It even had the railroad crossings and everything else. There was a car in front of us, and she decided she didn't want to wait for the train, and kind of went around the railings and smacked by the train. The train was right there. I mean, it was obvious that she was going to be hit. And I remember telling my husband, I don't want to stop. I don't want to help. I don't want to deal with it. However, we were the only ones around besides the train conductor. Back then, there was no cell phones. Don't pull out your cell phone and call 911. I was like, I'll find a business that's open. We're in an area with nothing around. You know, it was in the evenings. It was in the evenings. Yeah, we won't go there. It was late. It was in the evening. Finally, additional cars showed up, but it was to the point to where we saw the whole thing happen. What I think disturbs me the most is that she had an infant in a car seat carrier that wasn't seatbelt down. She took the hit full on face, train to the face, and the little one was literally in her car seat, strapped in at least, but just not in a seatbelt, but was like pushed to the floor. I still remember me saying, "Don't stop." I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to see it. It wasn't that I didn't want to do the right thing. I just didn't want to see the injury of everything.
I think right now that you said, I think a lot of times, maybe now that you said that, maybe that's probably one of the reasons. If I have my kids, I wouldn't want them to see something that it's gonna be captured and have that in their mind all the time. And that's kind of, I mean, it's good that you're trying to do the good thing, but it's kind of
Scary in the same time.
yeah, exactly.
You know, I forget, me and him ran down. I mean, this was probably a few years, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. We were down the hill. We were on our way up. We ran down to do something. I don't even remember what we did. It was to drop something off or do something, because he was like in a pair of sweatpants and I was in sweatpants, and we weren't going anywhere special. And we were driving back up the pass, and we saw this SUV. You know, she fell asleep. I believe she fell asleep because she hit the center divider and rolled. You know, and it's like one of those things, once again, it's like, oh, here we go. You know, we pulled over, and, you know, my husband gets out, gets on the side of the vehicle and started pulling everybody out, you know, making sure everybody was okay. But it's one of those things you can't assume because there's more people that someone's going to stop. You know, at least make a phone call or something. I've seen some crazy things on the 15 freeway. I've seen hit and runs. I've seen drunken people. I've seen it's horrible, you know, but at the same time, you want to protect your personal space at the same time. You don't want to be involved. So that same thing is because, one, you don't want to see it. Two, you don't want to be questioned because you've only seen what you could. So you try to stay out of that non-involvement aspects as well. But it's part of your human nature at the same time. So when we're looking at according to the principle of diffusion of responsibility, the fewer bystanders to an incident that there are, the more likely people are to help. So, like I mentioned, I mean, if you think there's a whole bunch of people around, the chances of you stopping to help is probably some to none. So when we're looking at suburbanization, de-investment, and deindustrialization, and the potential of urban. So suburbanization, we just talked about it. You know, because we can't build outward, we have to build upward. So as cities evolve, so does the architecture. This is in Spain. I know LA's got some cool architecture going on as well. I know China has cool architecture that's going on. When you're looking at the different aspects and you're looking at the ideals some of these guys come up with in regards to how to develop and how to do and all of that aspects, it's unbelievable. But at the same time, I look at this lovely, beautiful building and I look at it and go, where are my safety routes? How fast can I get out of this building? Where's my parachute, I guess, from the top? When you look at it from that aspect, you know, this is probably either a work or apartment complex. I don't know which one. I don't think it says. It just says a building. But I mean, the same issue with LA is going on too, you know. When you have the skyscrapers going up and you have all those aspects, there's safety protocols that they have to do, but it's part of also the suburbanization because there's nowhere else to do but to go up. But at the same time, safety factors, you know, you have to think of the other aspects of, you know, other intentions or other the degrees of safety. So, I mean, if you guys looked at that, was that one of the thought processes or like safety or, oh, that's pretty.
Safety.
I don't know. Maybe that's the mom in me. Safety. How do I get out of here
The same
fast?
thing sometimes.
You know,
Just
like
look
I said,
for exits and stuff.
yeah, you know, it's like one of those things. It's like it's gorgeous, it's pretty, and all that aspects. I'm sure the inside's just as gorgeous, but at the same time, it's kind of like, how do I get out of? How do I get up from the 250 floor down to the 40 in a matter of seconds if I have to? And where's my staircase? And you know, that's a lot of stairs to go down at the same time. So when we're looking at the urban growth of the urban flight type aspects, 50 years ago, you could see the first city and the surrounding villages or villagers grew independently. So you got to think of those like those edge cities, right? As 25 years ago, they fled the urban, you know, decayed, and the ring of the suburb kind of branched out a little bit more, and you still have those edge cities. And now you have the middle class flight continues outward. The urban problems are arriving to the outer rings. So, like I mentioned, we have expanded so much to where now, I mean, even the high desert wise, it's still branching outward. I mean, we don't have everybody so condensed and on top of each other, but we're still branching more and more outward. So de-investments as a result of redlining, pushing areas of cities into further decline. And then we have your de-industrialization, eliminating U.S. manufactured jobs. So what they're talking about here, when they're talking about the de-investments as they're also redlining, it's more or less discussions of like by officers of the financial institutions not to make loans in particular areas. So like those areas that are like poverty stricken, it's hard for their cities to get any type of loans to make sure they can maintain their city. So that they kind of push those cities to be further declined on the list, and then also to pretty much phase away to where they're non-existent. So it makes it really hard for them in regards to maintaining their status or even, you know, paying their normal bills and that type of aspects, or trying to develop in regards to more of a city to make themselves noticeable again. Like I said, I'll spit that out. And like I said, de-investment is a withdrawal of investment financial institutions. So a lot of those financial companies like warehouses or whatever that may have been in the area have up and left. So it's eliminating jobs as well within those cities. Just like here, we have how many warehouses up here that are empty and not fully functioning? There's a few close to the freeway as well. And then when we're looking at the potential of urban type aspects, this is U.S. suburbs are once unplanned, rambling affairs that took irregular shapes as people moved away from the city, and today's suburbs are planned in precise detail even before the first foundation is laid. This is, I do believe, is in Florida. But when you're looking at this, I look at this as a suburb of hell. Don't get lost. Don't forget what way you turn to get yourself back out, or you're going to be circling around on a loop. I've been in some, I mean, you could look at this as, you know, some of the suburban type aspects up here in Victorville area, you know, the newer development areas. Every house looks the same. And it's like, okay, did I come in this way? Did I come in that way? What way did I come? It's kind of one of those things to where identity type aspects, or that in regular, like you could drive, you could see a 2-story home, drive a few miles down, and you see like a historical, you know, home. There's not a precise detail to every single house, unlike some of these planned suburb areas now. So what they try to do is do these enterprise zones, to kind of go back a little bit to this one, to de-investment and de-industrialization. They try to do these enterprise zones that uses economic incentives to in a designated area to encourage investments, attracts businesses in the areas. So that way they get out of that decline and bring in more manufacturing, more businesses to make it more enticing for people to want to live in those areas. So it's called enterprise zone. That's an economic standpoint. Where am I at? Do you guys have any questions on chapter 14? Yes, no, maybe. I know you guys are probably tired. Like, I'm done. You guys have checked out on me.
Only because of my kids. Make me tired.
I'm going to go ahead and start on chapter 15 as well, just to get it going. We'll finish it up on Thursday, but I'm going to go ahead and get it going. We have a few minutes. So when we're looking at chapter 15, what is chapter 15? As my computer is beeping at me. Chapter 15 is social change in the environment. What has changed in our environment?
A lot. Technology for one.
Technologies for one. What about housing?
That too, it's been modernized to the way it was prior. I mean,
We've had even altercations in regards to our social change, in regards to the fact that culture and societies over time have changed because we've had to do social revolutions as well. So we have this, mapping of our 4 social revolutions, which we've had. We made basically a 5th one, which is mapping of the human geosystem, basically. But from our 4 social revolutions aspects, we went from hunting and gathering in societies to basically go shop. If you think about it, travel just as easily, the plow versus a tractor now, steam engines, industrialization to cars driving themselves, microchip, the post-industrial, and then pushing into another revolution of the geo mapping of biotechnology. The biotechnology aspects, being able to map out your child's identity in regards to, I want my child to have blonde hair, blue eyes, or blonde hair, green eyes, or brown hair, green eyes, or whatever they may be. We have this geo, mapping type aspects of the biotechnology, just technology in general. It has, if you think about when was the first car developed, what was it like? And when did it, we know that steam engines came around in the 18th century, but, that was like our revolution of industrialization. That was the start of everything. So when we're looking at the aspects of it, from the Gemini to the Giselles aspects, our working atmospheres have changed drastically because of all of our social revolutions. However, some areas still harvest things the old-fashioned way. So chili pepper harvest, here, evolution society-wise, how do you think this is how they pick chili peppers?
That's how we pick chili peppers now?
Yeah.
No. Well, yeah, but
Should they?
Purple.
There's so many other ways
There
for them
should
to
be
do it.
something, that could take the place of people having to pick them.
Yeah,
But
machine.
if you think about where they come from, chili peppers, Bangladesh, is an area where they're harvest. Most, least, or just industrialization type plants.
this kind of reminds me like when we watched that video of the cacao, that almost something similar to it.
Very similar to it. They are in the least industrial area. There's not that technology that's there. However, if they knew about the technology that could take away a lot of their bending, squatting, kneeling, could you imagine? I would be one happy camper if I was them. But this is kind of like one of those things that it's become strange or exotic to them, not fully understanding what they're picking these for. They just know they're herbs. They're herbs in regards to the aspects of something to eat. And could you imagine how hot their food is?
Very hot.
Mhm.
But then also, I know how you said it would make their job easier if they knew they can use the newer technology and machines and whatsoever. But then if you think about it in a way, it would also, there wouldn't be so much I guess, oh my God, jobs or some type of that as well, correct? I mean, it would eliminate.
It would eliminate the jobs. It would eliminate income because if you could take if you could take a machine to go out there and do their job, they no longer need to be there.
Mhm.
So
Just
now
move around, too.
you just industrialize them to the point to where you just made them basically poorer than what they already were. So imagine like the guys, like the video of like of the guys that did the cocoa beans. You know, if that was done more on the aspects of more of a production line and more of a aspects of, you know, an industrialization type aspects, what would their lifestyles be more like?
I guess there'll be more poverty, more,
Yeah, it would be more poverty stricken, but then what
yeah.
jobs are available for them?
Well, yeah.
None,
Not,
right?
yeah, because that's the main whole thing that they do there in that particular area, correct?
Hmm. Yeah. So I mean, if you take in certain those areas, so you know, you take a situation. Good night, night. You go to those certain areas, you know, that are the least industrialized areas, and they do those types of jobs. If you take them away and make them more industrialized, well, you just took away their livelihood. So you kind of have to be cautious in regards from, you know, being a traditional society and making it more of an industrialized area or making it more of an industrialized type aspect societies. So when we're looking at that industrial revolution and the capitalism aspects, social change in traditional societies, it's slow. But when you're industrializing things and you're making it more technology wise, it could be rapid and fast. Um, and sometimes people really can't keep up when it's too fast. Group size, traditional, small, large, demographic transitions, first stage, stage 3. We're kind of, because we are an industrialized, we're beyond that technology. We're looking at that, you know, bio aspects, the biotechnology, the geo type, you know, aspects in regards to it. Religious traditionals is more, as we industrialize, it becomes less. Um, Education, same thing. Informal now, it's really formal requirements, a lot of aspects. Place of residency, you know, rural, more land, and we're more urban, more suburb type aspects. Family size used to be larger, now smaller. This is basically a recap of all 14 chapters, guys. Right? It's just the way how we roll societies. Where before infant mortality used to be high, now it's low. Why? We have medication, we have technology, we have medications, we have, you know, so much for parent or for women to make sure that they're having a healthy baby aspects. Life expectancies used to be short, now they're long, same thing. We have that medication, we have the medical needs, you know, where before it used to be, you know, healthcare used to be in the home. Now you have doctor's offices. Same thing with severe illnesses. Um, Orientation, expectation of the future. We expect change, obviously. So as we're going through all of these aspects, technology is very complex now. It's not as simple as it used to be. Actually, I remember like when, like computer wise and stuff like that, I remember you know, it's not like you had to flip on the computer, log in a password, and then off it went. No, I remember when I was a kid, had a computer, you had to log it on, you had to literally type in a code in order for it to run the program you want it to run. So I would say when when you're talking about the technology wise, it's more complex, yes, but it has been simple as well. It's gotten simplified because now it's a matter of, you know, scanning your eyes to log into your cell phone, thumbprints. It's a lot more easier to do certain aspects. Division of labor, it used to be little in traditional societies, now it's more extensive. Um, the aspects of what job titles or whatever you do in the industry aspects, it could be as complex as a hierarchy from different levels to a little bit more of a branch down. Income, obviously, social relationships. We used to be a close knit. Now we are more independent, right? We're looking at, we're more open in regards to our social stratification, social mobility. We also move around a lot more. Statuses, more achieved. Gender equality is a little bit more there. View of morals, social control, tolerance of differences. Yeah, I remember, my kids will tell you this too. I used to have to yell at my kids to get off the internet so that way I could receive phone calls.
My dad used to do that. Or
Get off of
fax.
it.
He had to get a fax.
Yeah. Get a fax. What's a fax machine? I had someone ask me, what's a fax machine? Are you kidding me? So yeah.
You know, at work, when we have to request child abuse reports, like federal reports and stuff, we have to fax it. It irritates me so much.
And you gotta wait for one sheet at a time.
Yes. I'm like, why do we still use this?
It's like, here, let me just scan it and email it to you. It's a lot faster.
Exactly.
I know.
And there's paper trail. You can't tell me I didn't send it.
Yeah. Unless if it bounces back and then you gave me the wrong
Yeah.
email address.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things to where, I mean, we are socially revolutioning all the time. Social movements, the cutting edge of the social change, people banding together to demand change. We kind of have that going on now to a certain extent. People are banding together, demanding a change, but some other people are taking it out of control, and the possibilities of those changes occurring are going to be probably slim to none because of the neglect of the other individuals that are not doing it the right way. So that social movement, it takes a village to work together. It also takes that village to work together to make that demand of a change. So you have this, it used to be called a G8. It is now called just a G7. It's basically the structures of leaders of the most powerful nations meet in secluded, secure place to make world controlling decisions. If you please note on the lovely photo, this is in 2017, a meeting. It's basically Italy, in Italy, but it has, like I said, eight. It used to be a country of 8. Now it's shrunk down to be a country of 7. How many of you have ever heard G7 be mentioned any point in time in public or society or political?
I just heard about it in the book.
Right? It's one of these things that it's very hush hush, but if you think about it, you have 7 people basically deciding the conflict, the power, the decisions of worldwide aspects for everybody worldwide. I mean, you're making the decisions for billions of people. Whether if, least industrialized, stay least industrialized, industrialized, stay, still continue to industrialize, and the most industrializing still keeps going, and who does what, and who gets what, and who gets this, and who doesn't get this, and all of those types of aspects, you have 7 people making all those decisions. When you think about it, global politics wise, it's like, no, I don't want you guys making my decisions for me. So that's where a lot of the conflict and the power, kind of the correlation in regards to why wars kind of strike up, because if you don't have a common ground, you have disagreements, and that causes what?
Conflict.
Conflict. So, but at the same time, to maintain the global power requires a continuous development of weapons. At the same time, we are developing, I mean, we have drones now. I mean, technically, we don't even have to put, our military guys into danger because our technology has developed so much to where these drones are now carrying the ammo that they need to carry to do a lot of the, fighting for our military guys, which it's got its pros and cons. But at the same time, why do we need faster type aspects? What's wrong with some of the, aspects? I mean, we just had a launch which just went up in space, which has been the first launch in years. Do you guys know the purpose and the reason why that was developed, and what's the cause of it? Did you guys even know we even had a launch with all this craziness that's going on?
How long?
There's a new launch that just went out, and the reason why they're testing it and they send the astronauts up was because of the igniters, the jets that pushes them up into space is now able to be reused That's huge. Now you would have less, debris in the atmosphere and stuff like that. I mean, less fuel, less, building costs, less, all of those aspects. So now they're looking at possibly doing more um, shuttle, exploratories, sitting, back out in space again and doing more of the aspects of, what astronauts should do is exploratory and seeing what else is out there and that type of aspects. But, just like here, showing here is, F-35 Lightning II being refilled off the coast. It's now to the point where they don't even have to land anymore. Throw up a, plane with the fuel line and connect and off they go. It's easier. We've had different deployments of airplanes that have the silencers. You don't even know they exist. So it's one of those things to where when we're looking at the conflict of power and the global politics and, continuing to develop in weapons aspects. And, we're not the only ones that's developing, weapons. You always have people always trying to do bigger and better, and the aspects of who has the bigger of what, or who could do what first, was some of the areas. So we're looking at the theories and the process of a social change, evolution of a lower to higher, natural cycles, conflict of power of the resources, and the Erberg theories. So we have your unilinear, which is what? Does anybody remember what unilinear is?
Everybody follows the same.
Follows the same path. So could you imagine everybody following the same path, doing the same thing, day in, day out?
That would drive me a little crazy.
And boring.
Boring, right? If everybody did, think of this aspects of this world of everybody doing the same thing at a really slow. Everybody's happy. There's no deviant acts. Everybody's glad to see each other, and greets everybody with, lovely gestures and same path. Groundhog
Almost like
Day.
that. Almost like the Trolls movie, right? The first part, I think it is, that they all had to be in a horrible mood because that's the way the king wanted it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
if I'm
first
not
Trolls?
mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they weren't able to eat a troll, so therefore they were unable to be happy.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, guys. We have no kids and haven't ever watched Trolls. Sorry. But then you have the multilinear, which is more of the views of the evolution replace unilinear theories. This is where you have their own societies following some sequence, but you have the different routes of different ideals and different aspects, and being more modernized aspects, and becoming more of a lower and higher hierarchy of evolution, I guess you could kind of say. So you have natural cycles. Cycle theories assume that the civilization are like organisms. They are born, right? The youth become mature, they decline as they reach older age, and then finally they die. Kind of a sad thought when you think of it that way. But they're natural cycles. You go through a natural life cycle, just like everything else does as well. You go through a natural life cycle. You have this, aspects of civilian and wise as well. You go through different changes in all the aspects. So Marx's model of historical changes is kind of the thesis, a range of power contradicts some of the power. You have a new range of power, and then you have a classless state. So when he's talking about this conflict of power and resources, is kind of the model that he kind of came up with, is, the aspects of dialecting the process of history, and how do we do this, and how do we, arrange our power aspects, and how do we align people to a certain degree in regards to the powers. So, classless state. What would be considered a classless state? If you think about a classless state, it's each ruling, right? It's a dialectical view of history. It's basically sows the seeds of their own destruction. So a state does its own. They have their own leaderships. They have their own aspects in regards to who's in charge and who's not in charge. And I'm going to stop here. Because everybody's kind of like, I'm done. Do you have any questions?
No.
Nope.
No.
No, maybe, I don't know, don't care.
No, we care. We
I'm
just don't have
joking.
any questions.